And we've been telling consumers that you can come to eBay and find those great deals and get those packages under $3.
The all-important Gujarat verdict is in. Patels, farmers, businessmen, who voted how? That's really important because Gujarat could help foretell some of the trends that will take place in the big general elections in 2019. And to deep dive into those trends, analyze them and explain what they mean, we have with us on this special show on Bloomberg Quint, Praveen Chakravarty. He's Bloomberg Quint's contributing editor and also a fellow at the IDFC Institute. Praveen, hi. I know you've done a bunch of data crunching overnight. What are some of the key findings that you have that you'd like to share with viewers?
Sure. Thank you, Menka. So the BJP won the Gujarat state elections yesterday. When given a choice to vote for the BJP, a higher percentage of voters voted for the BJP in 2017 than in 2012. But a fewer percentage of voters voted compared to 2014. But for the Congress, a higher percentage of voters chose the Congress in 2017, both compared to 2012 and 2014. You know, it's a bit like India's GDP data. When things are very low, they can only go up, and that is the Congress's vote share going up. And when things are very high, it can only go down, and that explains the BJP's fallen vote share from 2014. What we'll do now is to actually look deeper into the numbers in terms of where the BJP gained and lost, and similarly for the Congress. So what we've done is we've categorized each assembly constituency in Gujarat on 4 broad parameters: urban-rural, high income, low income, high percentage of youth in a constituency versus low, and a high percentage of Muslim voters in a constituency versus low. I have to mention that this analysis is not based on a survey of voters, but based on actual census data collated and compiled for each constituency. Let us first look at broad vote shares of both the parties in the Gujarat elections since the 2009 Lok Sabha elections, because that's when delimitation happened, and we will look at broad vote share trends since 2009. So this helps draw a trend of how vote shares have moved. It is clear that the BJP vote share has fallen from its high of 50 or 60% in the 2014 elections to about 49% now in the 2017 elections. But it's still higher than its 2012 vote share. This, in a sense, is the saga of the BJP victory yesterday. Its 2014 vote share was so massive that it would have taken an enormous swing for it to lose Gujarat, regardless of whether it was a state or a Lok Sabha election. The BJP has always done better in the urban-rich constituencies traditionally. The gap between the BJP and the Congress is much wider in the urban-rich constituencies than in the rural poor. The BJP continues to maintain that lead over the Congress in urban constituencies. The BJP's urban vote share was 56% compared to the Congress's at 38%, still a massive lead. However, in rural constituencies, the Congress has had an edge over the BJP historically, except in 2014, where the BJP got a big lead even in rural constituencies. So in the 2017 election, the Congress bounced back and got a 46% vote share in rural constituencies versus the BJP's at 45%. We can observe a very similar trend in the high income and low income constituencies. Remember, urban and rural does not necessarily mean high income and low income. The BJP continues to have a 10 percentage point lead in the high income constituencies over the Congress. However, in the low income constituencies, the Congress does better, but by just 1 percentage point. Is this a reflection of the income inequality that economists talk about in India, translating itself into political choices and preferences? Something to be discussed. In constituencies with a high percentage of youth voters, it is traditionally believed that the BJP does better. Actually, our analysis shows that that's perhaps not the case. While the BJP still does better in constituencies with higher youth voters, the gap actually is narrowed considerably. So if you look at the charts, in constituencies with high percentage of youth voters, the gap between the BJP and Congress is almost non-existent. What about Muslim voters? In constituencies where a higher percentage of Muslim voters are present, the BJP still leads the Congress in constituencies with a high percentage of Muslim voters, where Muslim voters are higher than the average Muslim voters in the state. But this gap has narrowed considerably from the 2014 election. So in some sense, the BJP's performance in constituencies with higher Muslim population is in line with its overall performance across the state, which is at 49%. The BJP won 99 seats in the 2017 elections compared to 115 as of the 2012 elections, not including the by-elections. This is a loss of 16 seats. The Congress and its alliance won 80 seats in the 2017 election compared to 61, a gain of 19 seats. Of the BJP's 99 seats, 53 are urban and 46 are rural. Essentially, the BJP won 80% of all urban seats. The Congress won nearly 60% of all rural seats. This is the starkest urban-rural divide in Gujarat since the 2012 elections. So where did the BJP and Congress lose and gain seats vis-a-vis the 2012 elections? Of the original 115 seats that the BJP won in 2012, it lost 34 of them yesterday, 27 of which were rural constituencies. So essentially, of the 115 that it held, it lost 34, 27 rural constituencies. It gained 18 new constituencies, and hence there is a net loss of 16 seats. There was significant ground reporting during the elections that suggested severe voter angst, especially in urban constituencies. So what explains this dissonance between ground reporting and actual results? It's the margin of victory for the BJP in the 2014 elections in these urban constituencies. The BJP won these urban constituencies with such a massive margin that even a seemingly big swing or protest against the BJP was not enough to convert them into seats for the Congress. The interesting trend is that compared to 2012, both the BJP and the Congress have actually gained vote share across all segments: urban, rural, rich, poor, youth, Muslim constituencies. However, compared to 2014, the BJP has seen a huge fall in its urban, rural, high income, low income, youth, and Muslim constituencies, but the Congress has consistently gained across all these segments across the board. So when we compare it, the net message, the 2017 Gujarat elections has been one where paradoxically both the BJP and Congress have claimed victory, one electoral, the other political. The Congress claims that this is the lowest tally of seats for the BJP in 20 years and its highest in 25 years. The BJP claims that it has won Gujarat for an incredible 6th consecutive time and is undefeated for 2 decades. Both are absolutely right. The real question, though, is what does this Gujarat state election portend for the 2019 Lok Sabha elections?
Don't you just love data, right? It'll tell you pretty much any story you want to be able to tell. But I think first let's start by establishing where is this data from, because you have some unique data across urban, rural constituencies. That's common, but high income, low income, Hindu, Muslim. So where have we sourced this data from?
Yeah, so Menika, that's an important point. It's a very good question, because typically this data comes from surveys that different agencies do, or sometimes people just make up data. This data is actually from the census and the NSSO data, which is official data.
Okay.
We engaged with a firm called DataNet, where they collated this data village by village and compiled them to come up with assembly constituency characteristics. So it's actually official data. This is not based on survey data. So in that sense, if people had problems with the questions, then they have problems. If people have questions with problems with the data, then they have problems with the official data.
Okay, fair enough. I know that part of this effort was to try and get a sense of what these voting trends foretell for 2019. But before we get there, some critical points that you made through the various graphics that you showcased, in this, and that is that versus 2012, the BJP has lost, vote share, if I may call it so, or at least let me put it this way, more generically, support from the Muslim constituencies or Muslim voters. It has lost support from youth voters, and it has lost support from rural voters, right? Those are the three key areas where, compared to the last assembly elections, the BJP seems to have lost support.
Yeah, see, traditionally Indian elections have, we all know of them as through religion and caste lines. I think what this is telling us is the political economy of the urban-rural divide. And that is translating into political preferences. The BJP won 80% of all urban seats, but won only 40% of rural seats.
So they won urban and high income.
Yeah, urban and high income.
That's where the bulk of their support comes from. And that's not surprising at all, because that's been traditionally the upper middle class voter has been the BJP voter, right? That's
true. But then the rural support was not, the difference between the urban support and the rural support was not as wide as we saw yesterday. So this gap is the starkest.
Right.
Yes, the BJP has traditionally done better in urban, but the gap between urban and rural support for the BJP is the starkest.
Yeah.
Because the Congress won nearly 60% of our rural seats in yesterday's election.
You made a point when you were laying out the graphics where you said, right at the beginning, where you said that the Congress had fallen to such a low that there was only one way they could go, and that was up, right? Maybe that explains the gains that the Congress has made. But when you try to analyze the losses that the BJP has made and what they mean for how the BJP will react here on, because we've got three, I think, right? State elections coming up in 2018, and then the general elections in 2019. How would you interpret what the economic policy reaction will be from the government, the central government that is, in order to deal with these losses? That is the rural agrarian voter, the youth voter, and I suspect that, I'm not sure you can do anything from a community point of view, but the Muslim voter as well.
Sure. See, I think if from the BJP's perspective, especially from a policy perspective, one thing is clear: there are diminishing returns from the urban high-income constituencies. There's only so much that they can further gain. So then the natural strategy would be to try and do something to get more of the rural.
Correct.
So perhaps that's what the economic policy or policy priorities will be going forward. Then the big question is, the Congress promised farm loan waiver. The BJP did not.
And the Congress
won 60% of all rural. The BJP did not.
Yeah, well.
Does that tell us something? Should we learn something from this? I'm just asking these questions based on the facts that we know, right?
Yeah, well, all of us are moral hazard warriors. So, but I think that the polity is telling you something in this, right?
Clearly, right? I mean, if the gap is so large and there is diminishing returns to your urban high-income segment, then your natural tendency would be to try and do something to get this voter. Does that mean farm loan waiver and other such policies? We don't know, but clearly the facts tell us something.
Yeah, I think that's been the key takeaway that most economists and brokerages since last night have been trying to put together in their, okay, what happens to markets and economic policy here on, and everybody said maybe the only way they can move back the agrarian voter, the rural voter, is to sort of spend more time, effort and money on the rural economy, and that's possibly the tint with which the budget will be colored in February next year, right? But I'm not sure it's that simple, because I mean, you've put it down to farm loan waiver equals Congress support, but it can't necessarily be that simple.
Surely,
Yeah.
I'm simplifying it, but I'm just pointing that out as a policy question. I mean, I'm sure there are many other factors that worked in Congress's favor in the rural areas, but the policy measure was there was one party that announces and the other one did not, and there's a reflection in the vote share. So, of course it could be. I also actually think, Menaka, this is, I mean, now wearing my political economist hat, this is somewhat a reflection of what other economists have been warning us about, which is inequality. It could be income inequality, it could be economic inequality, it could be inequality of opportunity, but the divide is now starting to show up in political preferences of people. And that is something that I think could be actually tackled with policy.
Why are you think starting to show up? I mean, voting has always been on these lines, right?
The divide.
Okay, the divide. All right, fine.
The gap.
I'm curious, you did not present any data that explains, two things. One is there was so much anguish over GST in Gujarat. The textile traders, the diamond traders, the gems and jewelry guys. But in those areas where these industries are dominant, BJP still seems to have come up trumps. That's one. And the second bit where you've presented no data is the entire Patidar, sort of movement and the movement for reservations, which is also a socio-economic policy movement. And yet that seems to have won BJP, quite a bit of support as opposed to winning the Congress presence there.
So, see, I always warn people when they want to draw inferences from electoral outcomes, not to just look at headline win or loss, but go one step deeper in terms of vote shares. Because vote shares is what tells you about people's support for a certain policy or not. So let's take your first question, the GST and demonetization. Right. So the premise here is urban districts were affected a lot by GST, but the BJP continued to retain urban districts, so perhaps it's not that big a deal. But let me tell you what vote shares tell us. Ahmedabad, Surat, Gandhinagar, Rajkot, Jamnagar, Baroda, all urban districts. The vote share loss for BJP in these urban districts compared to its 2014 high is higher than its overall vote share loss across the state. In other words, the BJP lost more votes in these urban districts from its 2014 election than it did in the rest of the states. Does that still tell you that people were unhappy about GST, people were happy about GST, or they didn't care? What it merely tells us is the BJP's margin was so high in these urban segments that whatever angst was there against GST or other such policies was not enough for them to lose these seats. But clearly there's been a big decline in vote share, more than their vote share decline across the other parts of the state.
I've got to ask you this question. I'm sorry it may sound simplistic, but when we compare assembly elections, should we not compare to assembly elections? I mean, I know you extrapolate, and a lot of people do that, extrapolate the general elections data, and you break it down into assembly constituencies and rework it and reverse engineer it. But is that fair to do? I mean, doesn't the voter vote differently when he's electing a state government versus a central government?
So it's one of those classic perpetual myths about Indian elections, that voters vote differently for state elections and Lok Sabha elections. There is no empirical evidence to prove that. To the contrary, I have shown using my research that there is evidence to show that people actually don't distinguish between the two. When elections are held simultaneously, people choose exactly the same party for both. See, there's a famous saying in electoral politics, all elections are local. So, yes, there are issues that are different. Yes, there could, you would expect people to vote differently. But at the end of the day, people's voter preferences depend on what they feel about a certain party at that point in time. So I choose 2014 because it's the most recent.
Okay.
That's the only reason.
Okay. So you explained why Surat went the BJP way despite the GST anguish, but you haven't explained why, despite the Patidar protests, we saw large areas or large constituencies, vote in favor of BJP.
It's because I work only with official data and I want empirical evidence, and we do not have caste census that is officially released in the country. All the other analysis based on caste are based on surveys, are sometimes genuine, sometimes not so genuine. Hence, I do not have any information on Patidar or other caste-based voting preferences.
So there's no data to really allow us to official data to allow us to explain what those trends are. I think everything else is based on presumption or just individual analysis.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So I suppose the big question then is, what does this mean for 2019?
Yeah, it's the classic question. Again, I'll tell you, some of your viewers may relate to this, which is in the world of economics and business, we are used to scenario modeling, right? Oil prices will be this much, and hence we will model this. GDP growth will be this much, and hence we will forecast this. That's all we can do from a 2019 perspective, right? State elections, there is a series of elections. So that we could build a scenario and tell people what it means for 2019. So first, we have to understand the 2014 electoral victory of the BJP.
Right.
the BJP won 90% of its seats, of its tally of 282, from 12 core states. Of the 29 states, the remaining 17 do not matter for the BJP electorally. Okay, so the dependence and reliance on 12 core states is extraordinarily significant. Yeah? Of the 12 core states, 7 states have seen an election after, state election, after the 2014 Lok Sabha elections.
Right.
Yeah? So it's reasonable to look at these 7 states and find out how the BJP support and what it would mean for 2019. If I do this analysis, which includes Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Maharashtra, Assam, Jharkhand, Haryana, Delhi, Gujarat, from the 2014 tally of 282, the BJP is perhaps down by about 36 to 40 seats, Lok Sabha seats. If I just merely, again, remember this is scenario. Of course, people could say, oh, this is just numbers and now engineering, but that's all we're doing here.
Yeah.
Scenario analysis, right? So if I just look at it from that perspective, the 282 now stands more at 245, which means the BJP has to gain seats in other states, in its non-core states. In the non-core states, the states that have seen elections, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, since the 2014 election, the BJP has not gained anything significantly to make up for the loss. So at this point in time, if you ask me what this portends, there is a clear decline from the 282 for the BJP from a 2019 perspective. It is still unclear that this can be made up from its non-core states. And remember, we still have Karnataka, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, all of them are core states for the BJP.
Yeah. So we've got a couple of minutes left on the show before we run out of time and hand it over to the next show. But obviously, the BJP understands these numbers as well as you and I do, right? So their policy reaction is going to be to all of this, that we need to be able to draw more seats from our non-core states, and we need to do what we can to retain base control, if I can call it that, in the next, 3 important states, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, for sure. Karnataka, well, they're not the current ruling party in Karnataka.
But they won a majority in the 2014.
Yeah, but that's in the Lok Sabha elections. Yeah. So let's see if they're able to convert that into a victory from an assembly election point of view, right? Any quick sort of things to watch out for, next year in terms of policy reaction or reaction by the party to be able to do exactly this?
I think the policy, the policy choices will be about how do we minimize this gap between high income, low income, rural, urban, and this transcends across states. Now you could argue Rajasthan is perhaps more rural as a state compared to Gujarat, hence it's perhaps more important in states like Rajasthan. Remember the BJP won 25-0 in Rajasthan, 26-0 in Gujarat. So these are big states where that matter a lot, and they are much more rural than states like Tamil Nadu or Maharashtra or Gujarat. So I would, if you were to ask me to bet more rationally, then I would say I would see a clear shift to attracting the rural poor voters.
Okay, that does not distinguish it much from what the Congress strategy has been over several decades in this country. So it'll be interesting in 2018 to watch that. Well, entirely out of time, but here's where you can read more about Praveen's work. BloombergQuint.com. You can, of course, follow him on Twitter. He's at PravChak. But, come to us on our site and you can read a bunch of election analysis, economic analysis that Praveen has done, as well as what he has just presented in the last 20 minutes to you. So thanks very much for watching. And the next show coming up now at 11:30 is Trend Spotting.
सर ये नया प्रोजेक्ट ना डिफिकल्ट लग रहा है।